we are talking about how to beat inflation. And I know this is kind of weird coming on a segue. We don't want to end up like Zimbabwe, where we were literally not able to buy toilet paper, because if we did, we'd have to carry a wheelbarrow. And at that point, it was cheaper to wipe your butt with dollar bills or money than it is to buy toilet paper.
I ain't here for the money, I ain't here for the fame. Though it might be nice to own a jet plane, I'ma do it all for you, come along and see us.
So how do we beat inflation? What does that look like? How do we make our money not disappear? I need it like in my pocket, make it last. There's all the basic principles, but I want to get into some deep dives on investing, companies that went under, companies that made it, strategies you can use to follow through with that. So let's get right into the video. And before we do, like, share, subscribe, connect with us, share your comments on what you think, because a lot of this information is vague and we want to try and make it as not vague as possible. Inflation is like toothpaste. Once you get it out of the tube, you can hardly get it back in. And that's a quote from Stanley Druckenmiller. And I just love it because it's exactly the concept. We feel squeezed, but I don't want you to feel squeezed. I want you to stop and think, right? If costs of things are up by 30%, and what do? Right? A lot of people say just save money, cut costs. So you'd have to save 30% of what you're already making to keep up with inflation. Eggs and bread, all the stuff has gone up in price, okay? And so there's two tactics, right? Yes, you can save and you can invest, you can make more money. And that leads us to the hybrid economy that's happening. So what you see is people are working more than one job. You have the cottage economy, which is like small, cultural, like, hey, let's do a side hustle, let's build the community. But that's not scalable. So then they move on to work for like a larger company like Apple or something while they do their side hustle, just to keep up with everything that's going on. We're all going a little crazy here. I don't want you to feel squeezed. And the reason I say that is when you start feeling squeezed, you buy drinks like Prime. I'm not sponsored by Prime. Definitely not. Logan Paul or whatnot. You buy things that are unhealthy for yourself, where you could rather just slow down, get part of a community and really break into a mastermind that's going to help you break through inflation. I would say don't go for the cheap stuff, even though everything is up, right? So restaurants are up like, I think it's like 50%. Eggs and bread is like 25%. Schooling is up like 200% just with the food costs alone. So just be careful on where you land on that. A good app I will recommend is YNAB. It's a budgeting app that'll help you, as well as Dave Ramsey has a program that can break down all the costs and get you ahead and say, this is exactly how much I have, so I should focus and slow down. Okay, so we've spoken about that. I want to talk about companies that have made it. And this is a great quote as well. Inflation is the only form of taxation that can be imposed without legislation. Milton Friedman quoted this. Basically, the government can take money from you. They can squeeze you as much as they want until there's enough pain. And this is what we're experiencing. So they'll do that until they're happy with the result and the money that they've drawn out of the economy, so that they feel comfortable with the ceiling that they've reached. And that's what we're watching. They're like, oh wait, things are too expensive, we have too much debt, all these problems, so let's cause a little pain to get us through like this section or segment of the reality of life. And it's kind of painful, right? You're like, how can they have so much control? So even though you are paying tax, your money is worth less. So avoid lifestyle inflation. I want to talk about the company. So Procter & Gamble made it through the 1930s. You had Coca-Cola, General Electric. What Procter & Gamble did, which was brilliant, was they came up with new innovation. Tide, they came up with Pampers. And then Coca-Cola, they did just more products for cheaper prices, but that kind of matched their demographic. And they also had innovation. The next innovative part of like pivoting is really important for you as an individual. How do I think differently? Instead of becoming fearful, you need to stop and slow down and take inflation out of your mind and kind of make it another reality somewhere else, while you go through your day-to-day grind and you're not stressing yourself to the max, because that's when we make mistakes. General Electric took the concept of financing during that hard time. They just spread payments out to help people afford their products. So you need to think like that with your products and your services. How can I make it more affordable for my customers? How do I think about my customers? How do I bring them value without making my company go under? And that is where you really come in and provide more in the hybrid economy. So we talked about the companies that succeeded during a recession. Let's talk about the companies that didn't make it. So we have Lehman Brothers, Enron, Kodak. So what did they fail to do? They failed to innovate and pivot. So as an individual, you got to do the same thing. You got to innovate and pivot and get creative. Use coupons, just don't fall into the trap of just ignoring it, because it's going to catch up to you super quick. And you get priced out. So don't get desperate to buy. If you need to wait a little bit, just wait, like that's what we all have to do. Take up some side hustles, but we'll talk more about that. And I want to drive past a really important place to show you something. Okay, so quickly look at this. You don't want to go to a place like this if you're in a pinch. The reason is they charge you ridiculous rates and they take advantage of you. Yes, it's quick cash, easy cash, but you rather want to go through some burn. I'm going to talk about the dark side of companies that went down and why and how and what you can do to prevent yourself from like getting stuck in a pinch, as well as homelessness and what that looks like. You don't want to end up there in the system. The system will take you in there and you'll get stuck just living through that. And we know this. Companies like Blockbuster, what happened with them is they didn't innovate quick enough, and at one point Netflix tried to purchase them. They were like, hey, we'll give you an offer. They didn't take the offer, and by the end of it, they just crumbled, and there's one Blockbuster left now. It's just a vintage spot. Amazing. What a crazy concept, right? People just don't want to take that advice and go for it. Corruption, that was what happened with Enron. They were a multi-level, but they did it the wrong way. So I want to show you this. This is the homeless spot. These guys do a really good job helping them, but it's hard when you end up struggling like this and some other organization has to take care of you. They didn't choose to be there. Now, some people say, oh, that's sad, that's really bad, but they need space too, right? They need opportunities as well. South African homeless people are more interested in doing something because they have almost nothing. And with this inflation squeeze, we'll see more and more of that. However, don't get yourself in that mindset, because it's a good example of that, and it's a good reason for you to learn to not fall there. Medical expenses. Medical has gone up like 200%, I believe, because of COVID. Our families go through hard stuff. We have to give birth. We have to do everything that we need to do, and we can't stop rolling without that. So some things you should think about is making sure your community is good to give you income sources, or you can borrow from each other. I also recommend 0% APR cards that are 12 months with like Capital One, or like 15 or 20, 24 for debt consolidation. Quickly get yourself out of that and be able to pay like 400 to 1,000 every month. Use Dave Ramsey's Debt Snowball, use the YNAB budgeter, and go through that method. If you're in a really dark place, that's what I suggest. I don't suggest certain banks that offer it, because some of them, they get you later and it's not ideal. Another method is to find a loan that's got a low rate. If you're a business, you can do like SBA loans. There's some other opportunity loans that you can do that can help you. Now, the next segment, let's talk about what job opportunities can you work on, what hybrid economy positions could you do, and then we also want to talk about investments, and then we're going to close it off right behind the desk in my office.
For you.